Opening scene, soft orchestral music plays. The camera pans over a grand medieval palace surrounded by blooming gardens and singing birds. Narrator, gentle but dramatic tone. Once upon a time, there lived a princess whose beauty was known across kingdoms, but so was her pride. Every prince who came to seek her hand was met with mockery, insult, and laughter. One prince had a chin that curved slightly like a bird's beak, and the princess cruelly named him King Thrushbeard. The court laughed, but the insult echoed far beyond those palace walls. Her father, the king, grew weary of her arrogance. "If you find no man worthy," he said, "then you shall marry the next one who comes to the gate." The princess laughed until the next visitor arrived. Not a prince, not a knight, but a poor minstrel with ragged clothes and a kind smile, and with that, her story, the story of pride, downfall, and love began. Scene opens. A majestic throne room filled with music, laughter, and noble guests. The princess sits on a golden chair, radiant, but her eyes gleam with arrogance. Narrator, soft yet dramatic. In a kingdom where roses bloomed all year and the sky seemed forever blue, there lived a princess so beautiful that artists struggled to capture her grace. Yet beneath that beauty lay a heart filled with pride, and a tongue sharper than any sword. Princes traveled from faraway lands to seek her hand. Some brought jewels, others poems, and one even brought an entire ship made of silver. But the princess found joy not in kindness, but in ridicule. When the first suitor bowed, she mocked his posture. When another sang her a song, she laughed until tears ran down her cheeks. Then came a noble young king, graceful, wise, and gentle. His only flaw, if one could call it that, was a chin that curved slightly like a bird's beak. The princess tilted her head and smirked. "Well, look at that! Your chin looks just like a thrush's beak. Perhaps I should call you King Thrushbeard." The court burst into laughter. The young king's face flushed, but he said nothing. He only bowed, dignity unbroken, and left without another word. Her father, the king, watched in silence, shame burning in his heart. When the hall emptied, he turned to her and said sternly, "You mock men of honor, child. You treat good hearts like jesters for your amusement. This pride will one day cost you dearly." The princess only shrugged. "Then let pride be my crown, father. I will not marry for less than perfection." Days turned into weeks. Word of her cruelty spread across kingdoms. No prince dared return. The king, humiliated, called upon his council. "If she cannot respect a crown," he said, "then she shall marry the next man who comes through my gates, noble or not." The princess laughed. "So be it. I'll gladly marry the next beggar who knocks." Cut to a quiet morning. A wandering minstrel arrives at the castle gates, clothes torn, carrying a small lute. His voice, however, is calm and warm. He sings a song so gentle that even the guards pause to listen. The king hears the tune and smiles sadly. "Bring him in." When the princess sees him, her laughter dies. "Surely you jest, father?" But the king's voice was firm. "You mocked kings and scorned honor. Now you will keep your promise." Before she could protest, the bells rang, and the proud princess found herself wed to a poor minstrel. Cut to the princess leaving the palace, her silk gown traded for a simple dress. Her father watches from the balcony, sorrow in his eyes. Narrator, softly. And so began her journey, from a throne of pride to the humblest road of life. But what awaited her beyond the castle walls would change her forever. Opening scene. A dusty road winding away from the royal castle. The princess, once wrapped in silk, now walks barefoot beside her new husband, a poor minstrel humming softly to his lute. Narrator, calm, reflective tone. The proud princess had never walked so far in her life. Each step on the rough road was a reminder of what her pride had cost her. Her jewels were gone, her fine carriage left behind, and her silken gown replaced with plain linen. The minstrel, however, never raised his voice nor mocked her tears. He only smiled gently and said, "My lady, we have a long journey ahead. Pride cannot feed us, but patience can, she scowled. You dare lecture me? He chuckled softly. I only speak truth. You'll see soon enough. They passed through forests, crossed rivers, and finally reached a small village nestled in the hills. The princess stared in disbelief. The houses were crooked, the streets muddy, and chickens ran freely in the lanes. This cannot be our home, she whispered. The minstrel nodded toward a humble cottage with a straw roof. It's not much, he said, but it's ours. Inside, there was only one wooden chair, a small bed, and a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. For the first time, the princess sat silently. The weight of her new life pressed down on her shoulders. The next morning, the minstrel handed her a broom. We must keep our house clean, he said. Her eyes widened. You expect me to sweep? He nodded. Pride does not cook our meals nor mend our roof. We must work together. Reluctantly, she began. Her hands trembled, unaccustomed to labor. The broom handle bruised her palms and dust stung her eyes. Later, they went to the market to sell his songs. He sang to travelers while she stood beside him, her face hidden beneath a shawl. For every coin dropped into his cup, she felt a sting of shame. But also, for the first time, gratitude. One day, she burned their dinner trying to cook. Another, she spilled water while washing clothes and cried quietly. The minstrel never scolded her. He only helped, smiling kindly. Mistakes teach faster than pride ever could. Weeks passed. The princess grew thinner but stronger. Her hands calloused, her tone softened. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Yet, deep in her heart, something strange began to stir. Not bitterness, but understanding. She realized that humility was not humiliation. It was freedom, and the poor minstrel who had once seemed beneath her now seemed wiser than all the princes she'd rejected. Cut 2, a sunset over the cottage. The princess quietly hums one of his songs as she sweeps the floor. Narrator, warmly. Her lessons had only begun, for the world was about to test the heart she had only just begun to find. Opening scene. Morning mist over a bustling medieval market. Merchants shout, carts rattle, chickens scatter across the cobblestones. The princess stands at the edge, clutching a basket of pottery. Narrator, gentle, steady tone. Weeks turned into months, and the proud princess had slowly learned the rhythm of a simpler life. Her fine hands, once adorned with jewels, now bore faint scars from labor. She had learned to cook, to mend, and to keep her small cottage warm through cold nights. But the hardest lesson came the day her husband handed her a basket of clay pots. Take these to the market, he said kindly. Sell them, and we'll have enough to buy grain for winter. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You want me to sell pots? He smiled. Every hand must work, my lady, even royal ones. And so she went. At first, she stood awkwardly in the crowd. People brushed past her, merchants shouted prices, and laughter filled the air. She tried to speak, but her voice trembled. Fine pots. Strong and sturdy, she called weakly. No one listened. A group of women nearby whispered, Isn't that the new minstrel's wife? Poor thing, she looks lost. Their words stung like thorns, but she straightened her back and called again, louder this time. Fine pots! Perfect for storing grain. One old man stopped, inspected a pot, and handed her a single coin. She smiled, a real humble smile. For the first time, she felt the worth of earning something herself. But fate wasn't done testing her. Moments later, a drunk soldier stumbled through the market, laughing loudly. He tripped, crashing right into her stand. The pot shattered into 1,000 pieces. The crowd gasped. The princess froze, staring at the shards. Her day's work, gone. Tears filled her eyes. But before she could speak, the soldier just shrugged and stumbled off, leaving her kneeling among the broken clay. She wanted to scream, to curse, to demand respect like she once did in her father's hall. But instead, she bowed her head and began gathering the pieces quietly. Other merchants watched in silence, and one woman came forward, placing a few coins in the princess's trembling hand. Here, she said softly. Buy more clay. You've got spirit. The princess looked up, speechless. Gratitude replaced pride in her heart. That evening, when she returned home with only a handful of coins, she expected anger. But the minstrel simply smiled. You did well, he said. You faced the world with dignity, not pride. She sat beside him by the fire, staring at the glowing embers. Why are you always so kind to me? She asked. He looked into her eyes and replied softly, Because kindness is the only cure for pride. Cut to the princess placing a single coin on the table, her expression peaceful. Narrator, warmly. And in that tiny home, she began to understand something greater than royalty, the quiet honor of humility. Opening scene, a bright morning in the village. Bells ring in the distance. The princess, now dressed plainly but neatly, looks up from washing clothes as her husband enters the cottage with a parchment in hand. Narrator, calm, rich tone. Months passed, and the once proud princess had grown gentler with each sunrise. Her hands were rough, but her heart was soft. Her pride had been worn down not by shame, but by understanding. Then one day, her husband came home with news that would test her humility once more. He handed her a royal summons. The king's castle is holding a grand feast, he said. They need extra servants to help prepare and serve.